I don't have any paranormal or Bigfoot or whatever, but I've got a story that I don't think anybody's ever heard before. I worked for Tooele Army Depot for 38 years, and we built equipment and designed it to disassemble and to demill all kinds of ammunition from, 500, 2,000 pound bombs down to grenades and just ammunition bullets. And I guess it was back just before 9/11. They sent me over. I had a machinist background, and they needed some ammunition measured so that we can build the stuff to adapt our machines to the old Yugoslav, Russian, or whatever that Egypt had stored. And so I'm over there, and they keep bringing all kinds of ammunition. And I had not seen any igloos or storage facility, anything around there. So I asked this colonel that was with us, I said, where are you storing all this stuff? And he goes, well, he says, we store it in caves. And I says, wow, that's interesting. You think I might have a chance to go up and see one of these caves? And apparently they're fairly a secret thing with their military. So the next day he comes in, he says, we can show you our workshop. So we get in the car and we go up, and what there is there's a big cliff that goes miles and miles out into the desert. And when we first leave Cairo, there's all kinds of, looks like entrances and buildings and stuff that are carved into the mountain way up, and you think, how in the heck do they doing that? But apparently they use those, they're necropolises where they bury their dead, and they use the same one over and over for their family members. But I guess some of the areas were inaccessible or whatever, and they put them up on the cliff. But we went out there, and when we pulled up, there was rubble, rocks, and all kinds of stuff, just piles of it. So we get up there to this cliff face, and you know what a hangar door looks like? Big. It's got a man door, and then it looks like these big doors that would slide open with the windows. Well, that's what this had. So we went inside the man door, and another 15, 20 feet away was another wall with another man door. So he told us to wait there, and they sent for the guy that was going to give us the tour. So while we're standing there, I look up, and there's a cartouche up about 20 feet up in this cave, and it had hieroglyphs in it. And I didn't know what a cartouche was at that time, so I just asked the guy, I says, did the ancient Egyptians build this? And he goes, yes. And he started telling me the story. He says, when in the Bible it talks about when Joseph was sold into Egypt, and they had the dream of the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows. And I says, yeah, I know that story. And he says, this is where they stored the food. And he started describing these caves, and they're man-made caves, and they go back in. He says there's 1 or 2 of them that go back in a kilometer. And there's this corridor, and it looked to me like you could drive 2 semi-trucks side by side down through this corridor. It was high enough and wide enough. And there was, off to the side, you go through a little hall that's about 7 feet thick, and then there's a huge room, like a warehouse room. And he said these rooms are lined up all along the corridors here, and that's where they stored all the food. And he explained that those caves stay 56 degrees all year round, and they don't change. So they're real low humidity. So he says it's perfect conditions to store all this stuff. And then he was describing that. He says, when you came in, did you see big piles of rocks along the base of the cliff? And I go, yeah. He says, the year, 1,000 years, 2,000 years ago, the faces of these cliffs sloughed off, and he says they buried several of these big caves. And he says they don't allow anybody to excavate them because they don't have the manpower to research and to get in. He says, I would love, this is the Egyptian guy, he says, I would love to go in there and see if there's any of this stuff left in there. And so we got through the thing and we came down, and we went in to talk to the general in his office. And outside his office he has a garden, and he had like mesh over the top to protect it from the heat of the sun, and he had this stuff growing. And he says quite a bit of those plants that I'm growing out there are from seeds that we got from way back inside these caverns, these caves. So he was actually growing the seeds that were, I don't know, 3,500 years ago, whenever. And I wish I remembered who he said that cartouche came from. This is the first time I'd ever had anything like that go on. So I just wish I knew the name of the pharaoh or whoever the cartouche was for. And that's my story.
Next. Oh, God. Mike. Oh, no. Good to see you again.
Well, this is my second rendezvous, and I'm very proud you accepted me. And I'm going to tell you a story. My name is Salvador Delgadillo. And I want to tell a short story because I get tired of people's kind of woo, boo, 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 boo. This finger that you see was broken by a ghost. And that's a short story. According to, I've been treasure hunting full time for 40 years. I retired at 30 years old to be a full-time treasure hunter. Not too many people can retire at 30 years old. Believe it or not, that's my story. So anyway, this guy one day was talking about gold bars, stacked like cordwood, and I'm like a bulldog. You tell me a story, and I dig it as fast as I can get it. So one day I went behind the mountain, and I heard the noise where we're supposed to be at. And when I tried to do that, I was pushed twice, and the third time, I got a good souvenir. So when people talk about ghosts, I say, look at my finger. That's a good memory. Anyway, according to the stories, there's 2 columns of gold, and the bars out that way, they took on one out of the mountains. So that story has been proven. And people tell me, I got a metal detector that can detect gold at 200 miles away. And you know what I tell them? I tell you, I make you a deal. I tell you what I think is 200 tons of gold. It's all yours. On one condition, that you can prove me the metal detector works. And the next one that I know about, we go 50-50. So far, not a single person take my offer, okay? So, either they're lying or I'm lying. But if any of you ever go to Apache Junction, I will spend a week, 7 days with you and teach you what I know and put you like from here to that building to it. So if anyone you want to hold to me to it, you're welcome. Thank you.
Next.
Hey, Rob.
I don't see anybody coming up. Okay, we have a speaker. Be sure to introduce yourself. I had the sun in my eyes and I thought he was an angel.
Hey, my name's Scott, and I wasn't going to tell this story today because I didn't think it was a big deal, and then I spoke to somebody else here about an hour ago, and they had the same experience in the same place, so I thought, well, that's worth sharing then, because those are 2 points of data. A few weeks ago, I had an opportunity to go down and spend some time near Fort Duchesne, which is not too far from here, on the Mesa. If anybody watches the show on History Channel, you know what the Mesa is. And we were up on the Mesa, and we were up there after dark, and we were spending some time overlooking the ranch and watching the sky and hoping we'd see some kind of some sort of phenomenon, something unexplained. And we pulled out some chairs at our campsite, and we sat out there right along the creek. If you've ever watched the show, you know that right along the bottom of the ranch, there's a creek with a lot of Russian olives that are all through there down in that valley. We were down along that valley right above that creek, and we were watching the sky. We had lounge chairs so we could just stay up late and just watch the stars. And as we're all looking up, one of the young guys with me was probably looking at his phone, and he wasn't looking up with the rest of us, and he looked over and he said, "What's that?" And he looked over and saw a blue light moving probably about 4 or 5 feet above the ground, moving towards our campsite. And we looked over, and then we saw more lights, and there was green lights, and some of them were flashing, and they moved, and they came up from that creek, and they moved up around our campsite, and we looked up and down the creek. We didn't see any over there. We didn't see any over there, and they started moving around us, and they just were like flashing, and they were small, and then we realized they were fireflies. So we did see our first UFO at Skinwalker Ranch, but the very odd thing about that was it was my first time seeing fireflies in Utah, assuming they were fireflies, but the really strange thing was I've never seen a blue firefly. Has anybody ever seen a blue firefly? And so that really made us start to question if they were fireflies at all, because the first one that came was bright blue. And moved up to our camp. It was just a little dot of light that moved up, and it came right up to where we were, and then all the green ones followed it. Came up out of the creek bed and came over and surrounded our camp. And so that's my first UFO experience at Skinwalker Ranch.
That's awesome. Next. Now, you don't want me to have to tell a story, so I'm going to call on somebody who hasn't shared their story and is a little timid maybe, but get up here. We're all family. All right, come on up.
Yeah, my name's Pryor. This is actually a story my mom told me. She's 80 years old now. She's 80, actually, oh my gosh, she might be 89 now. But she's told me the story many years ago. So up in North Idaho, my family grew up in Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene up there, and we, used to go hunting as kids and up in the mountains. Mom's always been around the mountains and seen lots of bears and seen it all, seen a lot of wildlife. She knows the woods. And well, we were all hunting, and all the guy folks had left and were out, and she was at the camp alone. She had a 308 and was just hanging out for the day. And I have to apologize. I don't totally remember the story exactly what it goes, but I think it's kind of interesting. I just thought it's kind of a fun story. So she says she crawled back in the back of the truck with those canopies, and it was a nice day, and was in there, and apparently she had a liver's worth sandwich, which I can't even remember what that smells like anymore, but cheese and all that good stuff, pretty smelly stuff. But apparently Bigfoot walks into the camp. And I says, well, Mom, that must have been a bear? Was it just a big bear? She says, well, while he walks in, he's not on all fours, and he's in there, and he's kind of interested in coming up to the truck where she's at. Well, apparently he must smell her liver's worth sandwich. And she describes him, 8, 9 feet tall and all that. So I mean, I honestly, I don't really have all the details. Like when she tells it, she could tell, from very detailed what he looked like, his face structure, his hair, the whole thing. Well, she feeds him the liver's worst sandwich. So she didn't get pushed by him or attacked by him, but she fed him, and she was never. What the interesting part of the story was, she never felt afraid the whole time. She was very calm and just. One of those moments where she just felt like she actually talked to him. Actually, she said, she said she talked to him, and do you want the sandwich? Are you hungry? And she threw him out the sandwich. He took it and walked off. End of story.
All right, we're getting more and more people that are brave enough to get up and tell a story. We've got to have more stories from people who haven't been able to share yet. Because I was told we got to stick to 5 minutes because there's so many people want to share stories, and you don't want to hear another one of mine. All right. Come on up, Dave.
Okay.